And here Nigel Farage comes to the front of the line, just like Trump did, just like Obama did, and everybody is saying, reform, 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 reform's going to change. Make America great again. Make Britain great again. Trump said it. Obama said it. Farage said it. And all that happens is we believe in these things. We believe these things are going to work. We believe these things are going to happen. We believe there's going to be change. We believe that this person is going to be the salvation. Because this complex idea of salvation is deeply rooted into our heads. I think through Christianity, I think that we've got this savior complex, that if we wait around long enough, suddenly something is going to come and solve all the problems, which basically means that we don't take authority and responsibility into our own hands and start to try to solve the problems ourselves. If we don't solve the problems ourselves, then we're never, ever, 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 ever going to actually solve anything, are we? And so what happens is that power gets taken away from you. Where does the power first get taken away from you? Well, sometimes by your parents, but your parents have sort of got an ability to do that because they're your sort of parents, but school. And school is allowed to take your power away because your parents allow school to take your power away because your parents are too busy doing other things and they've been brainwashed as well. And in our culture, we've got this savior complex, but we've also got this idea that every single time a new politician comes along with a different idea, suddenly they're going to make all the difference that all the other politicians before have promised that we all believed on that never delivered. And so it's much like fashion. Every single year, you have a fashion show and the greatest fashion designers come and they just remake the same thing. They rehash the same thing. How many things can you make differently with a jumper, a blouse, a shirt, a bra, pants, trousers, shoes, socks, scarf, hat, gloves? That's what they've had for the last 500, 800 years. The fashion shows have been going on, I don't know, 70 years or 50 years or whatever. And every year there's like loads of fashion shows, Balenciaga, you've got Zara, you've got Beckham, you've got Ralph Lauren, Polo, you've got all of these fashion shows and they all come along and they all redevelop the same thing. You know, how many times can you change a square? How many times can you make a square interesting? It's like a telephone. It's just a rectangular shape and you have to try and make it different every single time to try and get people interested in it. There's not much you can do with a car or a telephone or clothes or shirt or shoes. And the same thing about politicians. The politicians say the same thing, which is difference, but really at the end of the day it's still the same thing. You can change the shirt 1,000 times, but at the end of the day it's still a shirt. You can make it look fantastic, but it's still a shirt. You can make a politician, or a politician can make something look fantastic, but he's still a politician. He's still going to lie. He's still not going to deliver. And every time the people fall into the same story. And I'm wondering, why is it that everyone keeps falling into the same story every 4 years or 5 years for generation after generation, with the inability to look back at the past and say, just hold on a minute, I was saying the same thing 4 years ago or 8 years ago or 12 years ago about this other person, thinking that they were going to bring all the change, they were going to start changing the world, the way that we live in. And what happened? The country got worse, because every single 4 years the country gets worse. It gets more tax, it gets poorer, because power is changing. England's no longer an empire. The power went to America. That's now going to China. Now we're no longer second. Now we're third. And our abilities are being taken away little bit by little bit by little bit. And so you've got the mainstream media and the alternative media, and these are very interesting elements, dynamics, which are starting to play into the Nigel Farage show. So you've got to understand, what is alternate media and what is mainstream media. Mainstream media, basically the television, is dinosaur media, dinosaur technology that parents and grandparents are still into because that's what they were brought up on. It's a sort of a legacy, I think it's called a legacy theory or a legacy cycle or a legacy something or other, whereby they use that material or that technology because that's what they've always done. When the technology changed with the iPhone, then you had a different platform in order to express stuff on. And that platform then slowly started to develop applications like TikTok, WhatsApp, etc., 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 YouTube. And people came to sort of rely and become addicted on those new media. Now, that new media had a different way of expressing itself than the television. So for instance, if you've got a TV and you've got a piece of paper and you've got a canvas has a painting, a piece of paper has a picture, and a television has a moving picture, and then you've got a radio, and then you've got a letter, and then you've got Morse code, and then you've got telegram. Each of these platforms has a different identity, it has a different essence, and the way that you use that and therefore express yourself because of the limitations of that media, then form or personalize or give a personality to the expression of what's going on. So for instance, if you've got an Android phone and you've got shorts, you can have shorts on your phone because you've got power to decide what you want to watch and not want to watch. However, on a television, you don't have that power, but because the television is just one station and everybody watches it, you can have a huge television, but you can't have a huge phone in your pocket. So when you want to watch the football, it's done on a big television. It's like a theatre. But when you want to watch something very small and something very quick, you can watch it on your telephone. So therefore, the types of material that are developed for the TV and the types of material that are developed for the telephone are going to be different. Also, because the children have now become accustomed to a new platform, a new social media, their brains have changed. They ask for different things. They need to be constantly updated. They need to be constantly touched by the media, addicted, pulled in, because they don't have concentration. So you have to upkeep something new in order to retain their attention on those little devices. And so what happens is you get all of this prank stuff coming out. You get all of this dance moves. You get all of this stupid stuff, how to do silly stuff or whatever it is, and the attention span is then suited for that type of material. So when you're producing information to take the minds and the brains of the people, the information that you're going to use for the platform of the television is going to be different from the platform of social media. And the people that look at the television aren't going to understand necessarily the platform of social media because it's a generational gap, a technological gap, an ideological gap, many gaps basically. And what happened was that with the television that everyone was watching, you had celebrities, and within the television you had the channels, and within the channels you had other companies that made media for those channels, and then you had actors that worked for companies that then were sold their produce to the television channels. Those celebrities didn't own always the rights of what they were doing. They were working for someone else. But with social media, that celebrity, instead of going through a business and then a channel and then to the people, they can go straight to the people. And if you go straight to the people, you sort of privatize yourself. And if you do that, then you can get funds. So you sell yourself on the social media platform, and then you get adverts that want to sell whilst you're on your channel, or you plug something, or YouTube is paying you for something, and you can make your money directly. So there was not an exodus, but what happened was that a different type of celebrity came into fashion. For instance, the Kim Kardashians or the other people, they could go directly to the people through media. So you have two different types of celebrity. Now, because there's sort of been an exodus of young people from the television dinosaur technology onto this new platform, well, first of all, the new platforms, for instance, the YouTubes and the BitChutes and the Parler and all of that stuff, it was opened up by people that didn't have a voice and didn't like the mainstream. The mainstream media didn't tell them or didn't give them something that they needed in order to keep their concentration. They didn't believe in the politics, they didn't believe in the science, they didn't believe what they were being told. They were the alternative media. They were the people that wanted to have a different voice, that were bored of the modern narrative. And they went onto these platforms, they opened the platforms up, they opened YouTube up. YouTube then had a golden age where it paid a lot of money to get more content. Once this content started building up, then they started to censor what was being said. And when you build the content up, you get more people watching. And so you pull the people away from the television, you pull the younger generation away from the TVs, and you pull it onto the new social media, onto YouTube. Once they become accustomed to YouTube, they can become accustomed to other applications, and other applications start to get made to sort of parallel or push the YouTube type agenda of media consumation. And then you've got your TikToks, and you've got your Instagrams, and you've got your BitChutes, and you've got all of the other social media platforms, which now the younger generation spread into and watch, which are highly addictive. They're like media drugs. And when that happened, the alternative media started to get drowned out. So the golden age of alternative media was probably 2005 to 2015. It was sort of in, I can't say that. It was sort of in where all of this stuff started to happen. And I've got to be careful here, because if I'm making the video for YouTube, I can't say this because they just ban all the videos. So how am I going to say this? Because there are a lot of other theories contrary to the modern narrative, people express themselves on the alternative media. However, a lot of the people that were expressing themselves on the alternative media would have been mainstream media. Yeah, they would have been mainstream media. So now you've already got the celebrities, or not so much celebrities, but people that have realized they have a voice on alternative media. Now you're starting to get the celebrities coming across. And of course, celebrities are being made on alternative media, like Joe Rogan or Jordan Peterson. And then you start to get celebrities that were famous on television that are now coming on to alternative media, like Russell Brand. Now, what happened with the alternative media is the alternative media, like Joe Rogan, they became like the mainstream of the alternative media, because that's where everybody was sort of going to and watching. But then you had people that were getting upset with the way that the mainstream media was working, and they were being chucked out of the mainstream media because of what they were saying. And so they then flocked into the alternative media. Now, them flocking into the alternative media because they had one or two differences, Tucker Carlson, Russell Brand, and other people, one or two differences with what the modern mainstream media was saying. They were mainstream media, and now they get pushed into the alternative media platform space with all of their mainstream ideas. But because they had one idea or two ideas which were different, they suddenly then are pushed out of their previous space, and then the next space they look for, which has been set up by the alternative media, they now dominate. And doing that, they start to drown out and dilute the alternative media with mainstream media under the guise or the camouflage of alternative media. And they're alternative media because they rejected the mainstream, or they were pushed out by the mainstream. But just because you're pushed out by the mainstream doesn't mean that you're alternative media, because the alternative media is very fringe. The alternative media talks about UFOs, it talks about consciousness, it talks about hippie stuff, it talks about weird things, it talks about stuff, different types of sciences, it talks about UFOs coming and making pyramids, it comes about DNA being modified by aliens. It talks about the Bible not being what it is, but there's all sorts of other books. It talks about, Gnostic ideas. It talks about the supernatural, horror shows, ghosts in houses, all of those things that the mainstream people are scared of, or don't want to talk, or belittle, or don't think are very important. Now, on the alternative media, people found fascinating because it was a different world, an alternate world, another world that they wanted to know about, which was denied from them at school. So the alternative media people were very creative, and they had like a very wide vision. The mainstream media people don't believe in all of that stuff, but because they're against one thing, or they've done something, or had an accusation of something like Russell Brand, they get pushed out of those channels because the channels need to keep their reputation. or the channel needs to have people believe in it because it's got a certain standard. And that standard is basically, if you look at CNN or BBC or Russia Today, they're basically propaganda outlets for the government. So the government has an agenda, and that agenda is pushed onto the television through the licensing and through the censorship and through the the news. And then when you don't want to listen to that, you go to the alternate media. So those people all believed in that stuff, but just because of a mistaken error or one ideological difference, which is very small, they then now get put in the pot with all the people that are completely different. Now, when they're put in the pot with all the people that are completely different, in order to make material, you have to change the way that you make material. So the way that you make material in the mainstream media, you can't make the same type of material on the alternate media because the platform's different. You have to cut the videos down to 2 minutes or 10 minutes. You have to have music. You have to have stops, goes. You've got to have pictures. You've got to have really cool stuff. You've got to speak quite quickly. You can't really stop. You've got to keep people attentive. You've got to make funny facial expressions. You've got to be weird or odd. You've got to be different. You know, all of those things. So they changed the way that they're presenting the stuff, and they present something which has gotten them kicked out of the mainstream media. So now they are chaos, now they are rebels, now they are anarchists. But everything else that they believe in is actually quite conservative, like Russell Brand. You know, he got accused of rape, so he loses his job on mainstream. He then moves into alternate media. But now he's conservative because he's gone back to God and he wants to look at the Bible and he wants to look at all of this stuff. The alternate media was really about spaceships, UFOs, aliens, and philosophies from intergalactic angels or reptilians or Alpha Reneus or whatever star system it was. It wasn't really about gods and stuff like that. But you did have the conservatives, which were like really right wing, because in the alternative media you've got very right wing as well, and that right wing can also take on the religion. But that right wing and religion was never something that was in the mainstream media. You know, like when you go towards Nazism or hard Nazism or hard right and you inculcate God and the Bible into it, that's something that's not allowed on mainstream media. But Russell Brand, he's liberal and funny and happy, cool and everything like that, and now he's got God into his life. I mean, he's like Mr. Flanders. He's like an electrocuted form of Mr. Flanders of The Simpsons. You know, now he's talking about God and he's getting his God friends on and he's getting his Christian friends on. And what happens is that because those people have moved on to the alternate media, they bring the people that were interested in Russell Brand, the people that wanted to, who love Russell Brand, who watched him on mainstream, they now go to alternate media. So the alternate media is now taking the people from the mainstream. So when the mainstream people now go to alternate media, those people now say, well, we're alternate media people. We're alt-right or alt-centre or whatever it is. We're all alternative people. We're not part of the mainstream. No, you are the mainstream because the alternative media has become the mainstream, which is mainstream alternative media. So you believe that you're alternative media, but in truth, you're actually mainstream media on a different platform. So basically, mainstream alternative media is basically the mainstream media on the social network platforms, which has changed its personality and style to reach out to the young people by changing the way that it manifests, by changing the way that it delivers, by changing the personalities that give the message. And basically what the mainstream alternative media is now saying is pretty much what the mainstream media was doing. You've got people, let's say, like Andrew Tate. Andrew Tate is now promoting cars, you know, or wealth or money. That was never on the old alternative media. There was never anything like that. You know, I mean, one of the fathers and architects of alternative media is David Icke, Mark Picasso, Max Eigen, Those are the real old school daddies of alternative media, and that ilk, you know. Obviously a lot of other people, but you know, these were people that were talking about things that made people laugh, you know, at them in the past. Now what they say, they're not laughed at anymore. They're not laughed at. A lot of people have come to the realization what those people said was actually true. But they won't believe everything, but they'll go down, you know, the path with those people 80% or 70%. And they like those people. But now the problem has arisen, whereby you've got people like David Icke or Max Eigen, and they're saying about all these new alternate media celebrity people, they're all fake, they're all rubbish, they're all terrible. And the people listening, the audience listening to the Egans or the Ikes about these, what they have to say about these new celebrities on the alternate media. Can't you say anything nice? Can't you say anything decent? Can't you deliver? Can't you allow these people? Why do you need to dominate that space? And I'll tell you why. Because when the Egans and the Ikes were on the mainstream, they were belittled by the audiences that are now listening to them. It's much easier to listen to Ike and Egan now than it was 20 years ago when they were talking about reptilians or other universes or whatever conspiracy theories that, you know, they were labeled to have said. So when you now believe what they say in the modern age because it's been proved correct, you are not really on their side, because if you went back 30 years to a time where what they were saying had not come to fruition, but there were some people that could see how it was going to come to fruition, those people on the alternate media now would not have been supportive of the current and real alternative media people. Now, some alternative media people like Alex Jones and Rogan have gone mainstream alternative media. They've now become the celebrities here. They were alternative media, but now they've become the mainstream alternative media, if you like. Now they've got the Musks in there as their friends. Now they've got the Trumps as their friends. Now they've got the lords, the ladies, the earls and the dukes of and the capitalists of modern society and modernization and industry on their sides. You know, like Musk went on to their shows, you know. One is Adrian Dittman and the other is Musk himself when David Icke was speaking to Jones. And so what you're seeing is David Icke is actually somebody that's very, very, very strict, and he doesn't change his ideas and his thoughts, not because he's stubborn, but because it's very easy to be pulled over now into giving up or being a little bit lazy or being a little bit lethargic or letting this in or taking on the cult celebrity of the alternate media. And David Icke is very clear that, look, if you really, really, really want to understand the difference between this reality and the fake reality, or the real media and the fake media, you've got to understand that the Nigel Farages of the world and the Trumps of the world, they're appearing to the alternate media as the saviors. But that's because they've been presented as saviors by the same system that controls the opposition. So Rishi Sunak and Keir Starmer, Joe Biden, Trump, and Nigel Farage are all in the running to become the next leaders of the Western world. But it almost seems as if they want Trump and Farage maybe to become leaders because they just humiliate the other side, like Joe Biden. But of course, they don't tell you that's what they're doing. They do it in secret so you can follow the theatre, you can believe in the theatre of stuff. And people are saying, no, well, you know, Farage and Trump, they're the saviours. And Ike is saying, but don't look at it like that. Look at it from an outside point of view. They're just two hands. Instead of it being Democrat, Republican, Labour, Conservative, Democrat, Republican, Labour, Conservative, right, which are the two hands. and then you've got Trump coming in, you know, or you've got Farage coming in. Look at it as in mainstream alternative media, mainstream media, mainstream alternative media, mainstream media, Labour, Tory, Republican, Democrat, mainstream alternative media, mainstream media, all owned by the same hands. So that's how you're being led in. That's how it's happening. The Trumps and the Farages have taken on the ideals of the mainstream alternative media. Get people out of the country, get the wokeness out of the country, cut the taxes or whatever it is, stop the war in Ukraine. But that is because something wants those people to come in. At the end of the day, if you look at their track records, Farage wants Tony Blair to be, I think, his vax czar, and Trump didn't stop the vax coming in. He didn't build a wall as he said he would. If you look at what they've done in the past, and you look at what they've said they're going to do and what they haven't completed, the problem of human society's amnesia can still be applied to those people as well. And so that's why, so the point of the video is that, number one, this change that we're being told about, that these new leaders are going to bring in, won't happen. These leaders are not really alternative. They're mainstream alternative, because the platform has been changed from the mainstream to the alternative media, but really they're the same thing. And when you attack people like David Icke, because he won't let up and he won't allow in these alternate media heroes into his cosmovision and his world, is because he understands that the alternate media has been played, and the people that are now in the alternate media are now celebrities, which have taken in ideas from the mainstream media, and the people watching the alternative media are the ones that have left the mainstream media to the alternate media, which is played out on a different social platform than the televisions, because everyone's got a telephone. And so in order to get to you and to get your interest and to make it more personalized, now it's still the mainstream media, but they've just changed the name and sexed it up a little bit.